This is the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards, and on this episode of the Speaking of Writers podcast, happy to be joined by Joe Hart, the Edgar Award winning and Wall Street Journal best-selling author whose propulsive, emotionally rich thrillers have captivated readers around the world. Joe is known for writing suspenseful, deeply human stories that don't just thrill, they cut deep. His latest is called I Become Her, and it's no exception. Set against the glittering backdrop of a Mediterranean honeymoon gone horribly wrong, this twisty, character driven thriller delves into themes of marriage, memory, power, and identity, all from a hauntingly intimate female perspective, with comparisons to Patricia Highsmith and Alfred Hitchcock, and high praise from Publishers Weekly and the Minnesota Star Tribune. This book is poised to become one of the standout thrillers of the year. Happy to have Joe Hart join me here on the Speaking of Writers podcast. Welcome, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I'm going to start with the big one here. I Become Her has such an intense psychological setup. A couple on their honeymoon, betrayal, memory loss, and buried secrets. Where did the idea for this story begin?
Yeah, it came from kind of developing my main character, Imogen. She just kind of came to me one day. I started thinking about a character, a woman who had run up against a lot of different barriers in her life, all the way from, personal, like family to societal barriers, work, all those things. And I just started thinking about a person who was really searching for who they were. And they knew, what was expected of them from other people's perspectives, but had never really grasped really and been comfortable with who they were. And I thought it was just such an interesting character to have then put into this kind of crucible that she finds herself in with her new husband, and kind of the situation that they're suddenly kind of at odds with one another. So she came first. She was definitely the driving part of the story, that she kind of spoke to me first, and everything kind of spooled out from her perspective and whatnot. So yeah, very, like you mentioned before, very character driven story for sure.
Do the characters come to you first typically?
Typically, sometimes it's a mixture. I'll have kind of that what if plot idea. You'll have that like kind of a cool like concept and be like, okay, I wonder if something like that would work. Um, but sometimes it's just a unique, you hear somebody say something in a store, or a family member mentions, one of their friends, something happening to them, and you think, oh, that's a really interesting, situation, or that sounds like an interesting person. So I usually, sometimes I'll just marry the two. I'll have this concept just kind of floating in the back of my mind, and then all of a sudden a character will start speaking, and I'll think about a characters, usually their struggle or something they've dealt with in the past, and then sometimes the two kind of join and gel, and we go from there. So yeah.
This novel digs deep into themes like gender roles, power dynamics in marriage, and personal identity, too. How did you balance the thriller elements with these layered emotional and societal undercurrents?
Yeah, I think they blend really well when you kind of really dig into some of these things, the aspects of certain relationships. Like the big one is, can you ever really know another person? And there's that unsettling idea of maybe not really knowing the person that you're in love with, or your partner. And I think that kind of very much gives a great basis, kind of a stepping point for a thriller or things like that, is that really psychological, emotional unease that I think a lot of readers can relate to, that worry. You have a worry in a relationship, or a misunderstanding, fight, any of those things. Playing on those fears and that unease in the emotional arena, marriage and different relationships. Yeah, I think that lends itself really well to that thriller aspect, because it can, you always, as an author, you always, take certain liberties, and you kind of like make things a little larger than life to some extent, to kind of bring the reader in and make it really interesting. But I think that that thriller aspect is definitely there. That always wondering if you can fully trust another person, because do you really know them as well as you think you do? So yeah.
Imogen's perspective is incredibly raw and authentic. What was it like writing from a female point of view, especially as the emotional and psychological stakes intensified?
Yeah, it's something I get asked quite a bit because I write a lot from a female perspective, like my main characters, and I always start out from they're a person to begin with. I mean, that's the first and foremost thing. They're a person, they're a human being. I write from that place. I'm also deeply aware that I'm a male writing a female main character, so that's something I think that you have to do. You do have to take seriously, and you try to not make any missteps. And if you're going to do that, I think you need to be careful as an author. So I really rely on as many women in my life as I can for their perspectives and for their insight, and to tell me what I'm doing right and wrong when I'm writing a female character. My wife, my agent, my editors, all of them women. I just really rely on their points of view. So it's one of those things. I think women face certain hurdles and barriers that men don't in a lot of aspects, in a lot of ways that are pretty apparent. So a lot of those things kind of come into the writing, and I want to be aware of those different things when I'm writing and whatnot. So it's one of those things you just kind of you balance things from very much a human perspective of just this is a person, this is a character, but also being aware of the implications of the persona that you're portraying and whatnot on the page. So yeah.
Lev is such a fascinating character, Joe. Charismatic, secretive, and possibly dangerous too. How did you build the tension around him, especially as his memory becomes a source of suspense here?
Yeah, it's very much you kind of hit it on the head there. It's Lev is an enigma. It's he
Mm.
is the kind of the card that's on the table that is it hasn't come face up yet, and we're just kind of wondering about him throughout the book. Um, he was really interesting and really fun to write because of that aspect. Is because of he's that wild card that in every scene that he's in, you're not 100% sure about him. You want to believe maybe that he's coming from a place of a good and trustworthy and things like that. But you're just never sure, and that's the fun part of that, building that unease too within a character, that you're seeing him through Imogen's eyes, and you're wondering through her character the same fears and the different things that she knows and doesn't know about him. It raises that kind of like it raises your hackles a little bit when he is in the scene, and you're trying to pick through and see, was that intentional? Did he do something intentional? Was that just kind of maybe Imogen's paranoia, or is she kind of blowing things out of proportion? So that was the a lot of fun writing from for him, for his character, is he's very much an enigma. So yeah.
Let's talk to you about the writing process a little bit. Your novels are so tightly plotted, yet deeply character driven. What does your writing process look like when balancing those elements?
Yeah, I think expediency and trying to do as much with as little as you can. Like spare prose. I really love books that so much is done in just so few words. There's authors that I really admire that can do that really, really well. So that's something that I've worked on as far as style and just the expediency of plot and making sure that a lot of times the chapters aren't overly long. They're little shorter chapters. Very snappy dialogue. I love good dialogue, and that's something I base a lot of judgment on when I start reading a book. If the author can write dialogue that really rings true, so that's something I really focus on is realistic dialogue. Yeah, and then just making sure that each scene, each chapter and each scene that you have the characters moving through, you know exactly where you should come in with that scene and then where you should get out. And so it doesn't go on, overly long. There's not too much fat in each scene to cut that, when you go into the editing process and whatnot. So yeah, doing more with less if you can has kind of been my standard over the years and whatnot. So yeah.
You've published now over 20 novels spanning thrillers, sci-fi, psychological suspense. How has your approach, Joe, to storytelling evolved over the years?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes back to the last question there is just being knowing how to create plot and character as quickly and efficiently as you can. Really move, pacing is a big thing. One of my editors, she way back when, I think it's 10 or 12 years ago, she really taught me about pacing and showed me how that kind of tempo of the story, where the different beats of the story and the rising action and then falling, and how long to keep those each, and where a reader needs to take a breather and take a break. So I think that's very much a big part of it too, is making sure your pacing is well thought out and whatnot. But I've always just really strived to make really well-rounded characters, make them real people as much as I can. I try to write real people on the page. So I think if you care about the characters, then you're going to care about the story. The book, you're going to be thinking about the book when you're not reading it. That's one of my biggest goals, is when somebody's reading a book and then they set it down, they want to get back to it. And then they're thinking about it when they're, running errands, or they're,
Yeah.
doing the dishes or doing anything like that. If they're thinking about the book in the background, then I've done my job right. So yeah.
Yeah, home run if you can
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
You live in Minnesota. Does the
Mhm.
setting or mood of the Midwest influence your work, even when your stories take place elsewhere?
Probably to some extent, I think that Minnesota nice, kind of imbues itself on certain characters and situations and whatnot. Uh, I you meet, in the Midwest, you meet a lot of, people in real life who are characters, and you run into them at the gas station, or you meet them at a party or something like that. And just the way they're bearing and the way they speak and things like that. I'm very good at, like, listening to people and picking up on those things, the little, idioms and the sayings, and just how they hold themselves. You just kind of catalog that. So I think very much, in your everyday life, it's probably for every writer. You use those things from, just observing people in your day-to-day life and whatnot. So yeah, a lot of that is probably finds its way into the books for sure.
What kind of feedback or reactions from readers stick with you the most? Is it what you were just talking about a few minutes ago, how they couldn't put it down? They, were in the kitchen cooking, washing dishes, whatever, and they had to get back to it. That's got to be a great feeling when you hear that.
It is. It is. It's so, being an author is very solitary for the most part. There's so many people that go into making the book a success or getting the book out into the world. But when you're writing it, when you're editing it, and those things, it's very solitary. So then when the book actually comes out and people are reading it and then getting back to you, it reminds me, somebody said online, I can't remember who it was. They said it's almost like when you write a book, it's like you tell a joke and then you wait years to hear if people like laugh, that
Yeah.
type of situation. So yeah, it's really, that's the gratifying part, is seeing the book get out into the world and people read it, and then they start to come back through social media, emails and different things like that, and hearing exactly those things, that it carried them away and they were transported, and they read it in a day or two, and it was something they couldn't quit thinking about, and they're going to recommend it to their close friends and family. That just, it makes all those hours where you're alone kind of toiling away at the keyboard, it makes it all worthwhile. So yeah, it's really gratifying.
And Joe, what do you hope readers walk away with after finishing the very last page of I Become Her?
Yeah, I want them to just kind of, to close the book and then just kind of sit with all the implications and kind of that whole journey that they went on, and just kind of maybe start to think back about how lots of little details probably made sense by the end. All these little, and that's what I try to put into most of my fiction, is little things, that kind of the threads that pull through the entire book. So then by the end, you have this kind of tapestry in your head, and you can kind of sit with it for a second, and it kind of means something, and it stays with you. If you can think about the book a few weeks and months and years afterwards, and you kind of remember that, you remember the plot, and you remember how you felt when you finished the book, that's yeah, top tier. That's the best I can do. So yeah, that's what I really look forward to. Yeah.
Joe Hart's newest thriller, I Become Her, is out now. And if you're a fan of twisty psychological suspense with depth and resonance, this is one you don't want to miss. You can learn more about Joe at joehartbooks.com and follow him on Instagram at Joe_Hart_author and Facebook at Joe Hart Author. Joe, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. This was great. So nice to chat. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. Speaking of writers, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Steve Richards.